Welcome everyone to our second career speaker series of the year. My name is Claude Richard, and I am the outreach coordinator and advisor for the Computer Information Technology department here at Delgado Community College, and I will be hosting this event. I'm joined today by Mr. Flynn Zaiger, CEO of Online Optimism, a digital marketing and design agency. Flynn has been featured on Forbes, Inc., Entrepreneur, CIO, and Social Media Today for his insights on digital marketing, managing millennials and entrepreneurship, and has a client base not just here in New Orleans, and that's super awesome, but also all over the Southeast and the East Coast, which is crazy impressive. We are super stoked to have him with us today. Before I hand it over to Flynn, I'd like to just tell everyone what exactly the Career Speaker Series is and go over a couple of ground rules. So for those who are new, haven't been here before, maybe have just forgotten, the Career Speaker Series is a monthly series of guest presentations from industry professionals in the IT and related business fields to just talk about what it is that they do. How they got where they are, how they got in the cool job that they're doing, and for students, see how you can get there too, or open your minds to something else out there. We put these events on just basically to demystify what tech careers are out there in the world, what opportunities are available there for students, faculty, staff, and members of Delgado's community, because technology is all around us. So that's why we're here. The format of this event's pretty standard. We have a presentation by our speaker, and that is followed by a Q&A portion. So please mute yourself until the Q&A time. Also, feel free to drop any questions in the chat. I will get them to our speaker. And finally, if you're having fun today, awesome. We encourage anyone who's watching to do a shout out about it on social media. We use the hashtag the other CSS. I'll drop that in the chat. And you can add us on Instagram, Twitter, or LinkedIn at Delgado IT Pro, and I will also drop that in the chat. I am done speaking now. I'm going to hand it over to Flynn. Flynn, take it away.
Cool. I'm sending a quick note to my social media team to look for the other CSS on social network. So if you use that hashtag, we'll probably share it if my message got out appropriately. Cool. My name is Flynn Zaiger. I am the CEO of Online Optimism. And I have about 30 minutes to go over a lot of stuff with you. So I'm excited to do this. Thank you, everyone, for coming in today. So I'm going to just introduce myself. I'm going to talk briefly about how I got to where I am today and the luck and work, mostly luck, a lot of work, a lot of luck, that led me to my career, or at least whatever the first 10 years of my career have looked like. And I'm going to talk about working different career paths, at least based on my experience and what I've seen at an agency in-house. And then I consider freelance and entrepreneurship pretty much the same because freelance goes well, you get a lot of clients, you'll start hiring people out, and that's pretty much entrepreneurship. So let me go into it just to kind of start with the end and where I actually am now. So I run Online Optimism. We consider ourselves a creative marketing agency because every agency needs a fun little tagline to go for themselves. We're about 8.5 years old. We started October 8th, 2012. I have 17 employees and we have 12 paid specialists. So we have about 29 people working for us, getting paid to do client work, essentially. 25 plus current monthly clients. We work for about 100, built over 100 websites, and like Claude was saying, 2 offices we just opened up in Atlanta, which is pretty exciting for us. But most of our staff is in New Orleans, although it's COVID, so most of our staff could really be anywhere, but as long as they change their Zoom backgrounds to New Orleans things, we assume they're still local at the moment. So how did I start? I actually grew up in New York, which I don't think is that important. What's more important and has helped me a lot more in my career is that my parents were entrepreneurs. This is them actually a few months ago. Don't know if you want a career in web design or marketing, but I would strongly recommend during COVID not running a men's retail clothing store that specializes in tuxedos and suits. That's a terrible business model at the moment. But my parents have run a clothing store since 1980. So they've seen just a few things. You could tell that they are entrepreneurs because no matter what they do, they always try to make a dollar and make a living. This is a good sign that my dad made. You can see why I got my marketing experience at the beginning of COVID for how we tried to sell tuxedos. Apparently it did not work, but someone walking by was a journalist and enjoyed the picture and they got written up about it, which was pretty cool. And that's really where I got my experience, and kind of the opportunity to see that entrepreneurship and running your own business is a potential career. I don't know if I would recommend it for everyone. I don't even know if I'd recommend it for myself at this point after doing it for 10 years. But it was an opportunity that I knew was out there. And so when I talk a little bit more about how I got here, I think the idea and the inspiration that this was a potential path for me was really inspired by them. I also was lucky enough that it gave me a platform. We're going to talk about portfolio pieces towards the end and how to build a career. But really, when you're starting off, the main thing that people want to see is that you've proven that you could do this. And I was lucky enough that because my parents had a clothing business in the early 2000s, I could get experience helping them. And so my first work was building eBay auction templates using HTML, which really gave me a head start when people started making MySpace pages. I was crushing it because I had a lot of layout experience with tuxedos, but I helped them put clothes on eBay. We built a Yahoo web store when that was a thing. And then when I started school, I had experience. I was able to put them as one of the first FBA sellers on Amazon. When people still thought Amazon were books, we were like this random weird category of tuxedos that we put them in. And over the years, we've sold through Sears and Walmart, built a Shopify store, a BigCommerce store. And still to this day, some of the weird SEO stuff that I did as a precocious 14 or 15-year-old, like building hundreds of pages to target specific sizes of suits, essentially still work. It's pretty cool to see. So anyway, came to New Orleans. I actually went to Tulane. And then I, more importantly, got a lot of internships. And that's kind of how I started. My first two were unpaid internships, actually both back in New York, promotions.com and Copelli Organics. One of the things that I will never say, that I usually say, is you should never burn bridges, especially in New Orleans. It's a very, very, very small city. And we'll talk about this at the end when we talk about trust and testimonials. But you will run into people all the time. I usually give that speech because I'm about to burn a slight bridge with creativepromotion.com was actually an interesting internship. Copelli, I learned a lot about how not to treat people. They paid us. It was an unpaid internship, but they would pay for half of a Metro card in New York, which when you're not getting paid, you spend a lot of time not working. And so one of the things I did was figure out what our hourly rate was for a half Metro card for a month. And we were getting paid, instead of paying for the full Metro card, which at a 40-hour work week would have been like 11 cents an hour, we were getting paid 6 cents an hour. So it was a good lesson. It taught me about how interns work together. And more importantly, I used to give away a lot of their chocolate espresso beans because I was supposed to do free sampling. I pretty much did every minimum wage job in that unpaid internship. I would clean up supermarket shelves. I would do data tallying. We worked out of the CEO's apartment, which is another good life advice, is if anyone ever says your interview is in an apartment, don't go to the interview. Weirdly enough, I got 4 more internships in college. New Media World Extreme Fighting was another one where my job interview was in the guy's apartment. Again, warning sign, red flag. That should never be happening. Yeah, so I did my first 2 internships, my first 2 years of college. I got 4 internships my senior year when I was graduating. 2 of these were paid, 2 of these were unpaid. Spoilers, the paid ones tended to treat me better. I do think that if you have limited experience like I had at the moment, I kind of had to put in my dues. But when I graduated from school, I actually got job offers from both of these paid internships because at the end of the day, I'm pretty good at digital marketing. And so they both wanted to keep me on. I actually took the third opportunity that I got, which was for Falk Alfred. It's a multinational. It's an interesting company. You're going to hear me talk a lot about this. It asked for people with way more experience. And I, with unabashed charisma and privilege, was like, I could apply for a job with 3 to 5 years. And because it was like listed in the weird way, which is another good piece of life advice, is the harder it is to apply for a job, usually the less applicants that will apply. It's one of those things where people that are like, hey, this job just asked for a resume and cover letter, and I need to upload 2 files and then I've applied for a job. No, like that job has hundreds, if not thousands of applications. So it's much better to apply for weird, difficult jobs that are tough to fill out applications and to persevere through them. I strongly believe in that. But anyway, I got this opportunity. It was great. I was super proud. It was decent money because it was for someone that should have had way more experience. And then I got to the job and I hated it. It was like white walls, and they had those motivational posters like hang in there and teamwork. And I laughed at them the first day. Then I found out that they were like the real office decor, and they took those artwork seriously. Like a picture of cats was going to make people work better as a team. I knew it was a tough job because I started calling my family a lot more. I talked to them once a week, which was way too much. Obviously, it's happening now because of COVID, but back then that was a lot of time to talk to my family, and they were like, "You don't seem to be enjoying your job." I was like, "I don't enjoy my job." So they actually suggested that I reach back out to the old paid internships who had given me offers, and one of them, which if you hadn't seen it, it was the Earhart Group. It's actually one of the top PR agencies in New Orleans. It's another job that I didn't deserve to get, but I basically went in and I had a weird, I was lucky enough that I had a lot of Google Ads experience, which is much more popular now, but back in 2012, it was taking over the advertising world and no one knew what the heck they were doing, but I happened to do it for my parents. That's how I got another job that I wasn't qualified for. A lot of privilege, a lot of luck is how I got here. It's not on any of these slides, but it is kind of the unspoken thing. Anyway, we'll get to that in a bit. So I got this opportunity. I reached back out to them and they essentially said, well, if you don't have we don't really can't like fit you into our careers anymore, but if you had your own company, we would hire you and we'd probably keep you afloat for the first year. And I've been forever grateful for the Earhart Group because they actually did do that the first year. And so I did. How you start a business is you Google how to start a business, a step-by-step guide, and there's a very helpful guide. There's many of these now online. Then you just follow the steps, and no one like stops you, which is really weird. Someone should like sit you down and be like, "Hey, are you sure? Like, are you going to do this?" I think the best example of how truly unprepared I was for starting a business is I went to open a bank account for the business, which was totally fun. I thought someone would stop me then, and the person who opened it asked me like, is this going to be a full-time business? And I said, yes. And then asked me, B, how much money do I expect to bring in? At that point, I was like, I don't know. Like, I don't think I could sell a website for more than 500. So if I build 2 websites a month, it's $1,000. So it's $1,000. So I told that to him. And the guy just looks at me. He's like, so just to be clear, you expect to live off $12,000 a year. And at that point, I was living in the Irish Channel with 3 roommates, and my rent was $400, and my preferred drink is High Life. So I actually could live off $12,000 a year, but I was like, that does seem low. Let's double that. The guy's like, okay, $24,000. You're going to be great. Yeah, I had no preparation, nothing other than I didn't like my job. I had a connection who said that they would hire me, and I seen my parents struggle through this, and it seemed like a thing. It seemed like it could kind of work until I got a real job. Obviously, that hasn't happened yet. So I built a website. This is a good example of how looking up trending web design languages is not the best idea for picking out a career. I looked it up and they were telling me that Joomla was the future, which we still see Joomla sites occasionally. So I tried to build a Joomla site. Actually looked all right. I'd like to think it's not great. I got lucky that minimalism was really in 2012 because I'm terrible at design. This is the first and last Joomla site that Online Optimism has ever built. And I faked it till I made it. So I started like reaching out to bloggers. Silicon Bayou News is actually a blog that's still around. And I was like, hey, I am a marketing expert and I would like to feature great marketing in Louisiana. I wasn't doing any marketing for anyone, but I told them I was an expert and I wrote the first article. And that's actually what I found to be really key is that it's harder for people to say no if you just do the work. So I started writing blog posts for them. And I actually got on my competitors' radars a lot earlier than most people do because I was bragging and complimenting about their work and pretending that my work was in that level when it very much was not at all. I did the same thing to start giving talks like this one. So they were like, I would email them and say, hey, I've already made a talk for your organization. Are you interested in it? And they were like, well, that seems like no work. And so they let me do it. I learned another lesson if you ever speak like I am speaking right now is it's a great thing to put your contact information at the end and also make yourself super available after this for any follow-up emails. Back then I was 23 and so I finished my talk and I just shoveled food in my mouth because I was starving. I made no connections, did no business after that, learned nothing. So that's another good piece of advice is try to schedule time after any presentations to talk to people. That's the whole point of this. And then I just grew. was good at digital marketing. Like all these things kind of paid off, and I started ranking higher on Google, and people found me. I didn't mention this, but one of the things the Herc Group actually gave me office space. They were very, very kind my first year, and I think they also wanted to keep a closer eye on me because they started trusting me with some of their client work. And so overnight, I went to Walmart, bought a desk, moved it in, built it, and didn't tell anyone. And one of their interns was actually leaving, and they were like, oh, you should hire this intern. Like, he's leaving us. He's a good intern. And I think they meant for me to like hire him externally. And I was like, well, he has keys to the office already. Like, just gonna put him here. And then they walked by and saw that I built a second desk overnight. Easier to ask forgiveness. And we grew. I think the key, and you'll hear me talk about this a little more in the agency, is hiring good people. And one of the many, many strands of luck, and clearly luck is pretty key to a lot of my story, is that I happened to meet some of the right people, and some brilliant people, actually. This was my summer, my second or third year. I'm on the right. You can see I look young. And then Morgan Bashman is actually still a digital ads director. 6 years later, she's our longest employee. The three people on the right are not with us, but they're actually still involved in marketing. Bottom left is Eric Knopfler. He works for Deep Fried Advertising, does great design and marketing work for them. The woman above him is Lauren Siegel, who does work for Trepwise, which is an amazing consulting organization. And then the woman behind her is Liz Doppelt, who now works for the Fed. We paid our interns always, we paid our staff, and those treated people well, and we gave them opportunities. And we were really, really lucky to be able to make some great hires early on that honestly kept me afloat when I shouldn't have been. And then we kept faking it. We spoke at Sage Summit, which is a national conference, because they asked me my rates for speaking. And I was like, I don't know. And I made up a number per day. And I found out good life advice also, if you ever become a speaker, charge per talk, because I charged per day and they put me on 9 presentations. And I was like, well, I can't back out now. And I probably could have backed out now. And they had me talk about anything. I was talking about like technology tools. I was talking about like reaching the 1%, crazy talks that I know right to give. But anyway, lesson learned, charge per day. But from that, I started speaking in Chicago for them. And again, we focused a lot on careers and people. So we named it Best Place to Work. We're slowly moving up City Businesses list. 5 years now, we came in third last place, second place this year, trying to get to number 1. We've also won a couple awards for like most inspiring workplace in North America, as well as DigiDay's most passionate employees. Again, most of the reason that we're successful is I've somehow built a team that really, really believes in this company. So that's who we are, 17 employees. Again, mostly based in New Orleans, but hopefully expanding a lot more career-wise in Atlanta soon. We're pretty proud of what we do. It's been a weird career path. I think it'd be hard to duplicate just because there was so many things that I should have screwed up a lot more of. But I got lucky. There's no way around it. There's a lot more luck involved in it, and I'm appreciative of that and what I try to do. And one of the main things that I really want to focus on is building careers for my staff and for the people that we come across. Our agency vision, and I kind of hate company mission, vision, values, because I think that a lot of companies, you make them, you do a nice retreat day, everyone feels great about it, and then you throw it up on a wall, and that's your mission, vision, values. But I think I actually tried doing that back in 2018. I walked into a meeting with my staff and said, here's our mission, vision, and values that I came up with over the weekend. And that was a delightful conversation. And they disagreed, and we fought about it. We literally ended yelling an hour later. And then we were like, we'll talk about this next week. And we'll talk about this next week. And then about a year of weekly meetings later, we finally agreed on it. And as much as I did not enjoy that process, it actually worked pretty well. And we have a vision. So anyway, our vision is to be a marketing agency that companies want to work with and people aspire to work for. And hopefully we work our way to that. Anyway, enough about me. Let's talk about what you're actually probably here for, which is my advice and ideas on what I think the best career paths are and things to think about as you take over and kind of take on working in this space. The first thing to note is that most people will end up starting at an agency. rather than in-house. So whether it's a web design agency, software agency, anything like that, this tends to be the go-to place for people's foundation. And I strongly recommend doing this before you try freelancing and entrepreneurship. You get a ton of experience at agencies. You get to work for different clients. You'll also get to work with different experts. For example, if you want to go into web design, your work portfolio is going to look a lot better if you could talk about websites that you've built where you had a graphic designer helping you and things like that. It's kind of the secret to portfolios. Not that you should ever fib or lie on one, but you could talk about you worked on this project where you had help on this project, of course. And agency stuff will give you a really, really good experience. You'll also get to work with much bigger clients than you likely would be able to work on your own, and in a variety of industries. It's also a great way to get connections, which is going to be key when we talk about entrepreneurship and freelancing in a couple of minutes, is those connections will absolutely be essential to you succeeding if you do decide to do a career path change later on. The biggest difficulty with agencies, and I realize saying this as an agency leader is a little weird, work-life balance is typically terrible at agencies. It is notoriously bad, particularly on the marketing side. A little less from the web design side, but if you start dealing with hosting and security, it does get difficult. But if you're just designing websites, there's usually less emergencies at midnight. But work-life balance at particularly the bigger agencies is notorious. Not that I really trust Glassdoor, but if you are considering an agency experience, I would consider looking up online reviews and honestly reaching out on LinkedIn and talking to people at the agency or any connections that you have. Don't just talk to the HR person or the person interviewing you. If they want you on their team, they're going to spice things up and make them positive, but try your best to reach out to someone at the company and ask them, say, hey, I'd love to buy you coffee or just do a Zoom call or anything. I'd love to talk to you about what your job is like. Even if they won't explicitly say, I love or hate my job, you can usually pick up on how the work-life balance is. We're talking about like, how are things like, do you get to take vacations? Are you expected to check email? How are they with, if I'm taking care of a family member, or if I have how are they with childcare, anything like that. Talking to non-HR people and non-hiring people is going to be the best way to figure out if a company is actually the right fit for you. Just something to think about. In-house. Again, agency leader, kind of weird for me to say this, strongly recommend working in-house if you get the opportunity. And that means specifically, if you don't know that phrase, I'm just like at a company itself, working on the internal team rather than working for a marketing agency that works for a lot of clients. It's usually better to work for one company. And there's a lot of reasons for this. One is you get to work on all the different elements of a campaign. So you get to work on on marketing, on the web design, on connecting it all, the email, social, all that fun stuff. And you tend to get a lot better like trackable results because you're working for someone. Usually revenue is the end goal. And you'll be able to see from all the elements of a campaign what's working or what's not. The other benefit is you get to use vendors like agencies. So if you're not an expert in something, hopefully you have some sort of marketing budget. You could hire freelancers or agencies to complement your abilities, and that's always really nice. You have a better work-life balance. Typically, the culture is less fun, so I wrote less ping pong tables. That being said, I will tell you the cynical reason that we all have super fun cultures and why I get my staff t-shirts and care packages is because if you get people that kind of stuff, they tend to ignore the work-life balance problems that exist. Because it's really cool that you have a ping pong table when you're working at 7 p.m. at night, and that happy hour beer sure tastes great. I will say we at Online Optimism, we care like a lot about work-life balance. Like we literally will sit you down like 10 minutes into day one and be like, stop, don't check your email outside of work. For the love of everything, you don't need to check your email. But that's pretty rare, we've discovered. You might have noticed my team is notoriously young, and it's not something that I'm very proud of, but it does happen. And we're trying to kind of fight the cliche of millennials switching jobs every 2 years, which is other life advice that I shouldn't give you as a CEO, but I will tell you it is usually better to switch positions to move up with salary and position and responsibilities than to try to move up at an internal organization. We're obviously trying to do that better for our staff, but for the most part, always be job searching. I should really make sure my staff isn't on this call. Always be job searching, and always be like updating your resume once a year and applying for jobs. Even if you're applying for jobs that are way above your level, it's very hard for you to see what the job market's like when you're at a company unless you're applying for things. And there's not really any downside to it. Usually there's no downside to it. Cool. That's marketing. Let's talk about design. There's a ton of competition if you're going into like front-end design and graphics. I know this because whenever we put up applications for like specialists and stuff, we put up a bunch of different departments. And so we have pretty good data on where most people are going into, especially in New Orleans, Atlanta, because I put up 6 different departments and then I make fun graphs internally that we share, which actually to help us increase our hiring and applicants from certain areas. I strongly recommend, and this is kind of the lesson of Joomla from 2012 that I did. If you were interested in trying to figure out what part of web design you want to go into, what you should be doing now is looking at positions. Even if you feel like you're not qualified for them yet because you haven't graduated, spend this weekend, spend time job searching as if you were graduated and what that would do is that you could look at their job requirements and see what they are looking for. And that gives you time to learn that stuff. Even if it's a textbook that you read or an online course or something, or just whatever you get, like looking at the positions that you want 10 months, a year from now, gives you time to learn that. And rather than like listening to an expert, or I hate calling myself an expert, whatever the heck I know, like rather than listening to me, find the job you want and see what skills you're gonna need. And then also apply above your level. There's a lot of studies on how men like myself will totally have that unearned confidence to apply for positions that, like I did out of college where it says 3 to 5 years experience. And I'm like, I have 3 internships. That counts as 3 years experience. Women tend to not do that. There's studies, and you should totally do that. Have the unearned confidence of Flynn that I have no right to have and apply for those positions, because it really is a lot more opportunity. And being on the other side, we are far more flexible. If you look like a passionate, dedicated applicant, those numbers aren't usually hard set, and they change based on salary and requirements and what else is coming in. So I really recommend applying above your level. Other things, the main thing for design is your portfolio. To be frank, we like do interviews and stuff, and we do assignments and all that. But I will tell you that 95% of our time reviewing design applicants is looking at their portfolio, because that really tells us whether or not. The other 5% is usually just culture fit. Again, recommend building on a platform that you want to build a career on. So build your website on whatever you want to be doing in your career. And again, this is a great time if you're not sure what language or platform to build your site on. This is when you want to look at those opportunities. Do projects for fun. I kind of think that gets dangerously into work-life balance, and there's a lot of really terrible stories of like Silicon Valley job interviews where they won't hire you if you're not coding for fun on the weekends, which is a really obnoxious thing that companies would do. The other thing I want to make sure is that don't just check your portfolio site on like a beautiful 27-inch iMac. Make sure that you check it on all devices. For example, like I and other directors will sometimes review applicants on phones, on tablets. And this is often looked past, but a frustrating portfolio experience will get people to score your applicant thing lower. So make sure that whatever you're sending in, whether it's a website, PDF, or anything, that's going to be good, look readable on all devices. Major trends that I see, a lot of cloud experience is going to be key to the future. That's actually not something I'm great in, so I don't have too many slides on that, or really much more information than this one sentence. But AWS, Google Cloud, Azure is the key. There's a big WordPress kind of gets looked down upon, I think, because we can build a WordPress site in 15 minutes, slap a template on, and it will look okay. But it does power a third of the internet. And if you look at the job listings in New Orleans, for example, if you're on worknola.com and you look up web design, most of them are going to be looking for WordPress or PHP developers. So while it isn't the coolest or leading edge of web design, there's a reason it's been around for over a decade. There's a reason it powers a third of the internet. It's a powerful platform, and it's where the jobs are, at least in New Orleans at the moment. Then wasn't really sure how relevant, but I'd say security, internet security is pretty big. I don't know how well in New Orleans, but for remote job opportunities, it's massive, and it's likely where a lot of money is going in the future. Cool. I'll talk a little bit less about marketing, and then I know I'm at 30, so I'll try to wrap this up quickly. I recommend finding a niche and becoming an expert at it in marketing. again, like I was saying, we see from different departments where there's many more applicants. If your goal at the end of the day is I would like a job now, I would like money coming in, totally, that's where I literally live my life. We have way less applicants, and there's way less of an applicant pool for anything related to Google Ads or data. I think most people who think about marketing think about creative, fun stuff. So no one really cares about Google Ads or anything that has to deal with a lot of spreadsheets. That's where the money is, and there's way less applicants for those opportunities. There's a Google Ads certification to get. There's a few other things. That's the kind of experience you want. But then there's a little more with SEO. And then lastly, the one that I would recommend, very few people get into is social media. We always, pretty much everyone thinks they could do social media. And to be honest, most people can do basic social media, but it is a lot of competition, essentially. And it's really, really hard to stand out from the crowd. It takes a lot of time, and you basically need to be good at copywriting, good at community management, good at design. And so it's really, really difficult. But yeah, if you really do love it, then you should apply. I don't want to discourage you from your passion. I also recommend a lot of certifications. HubSpot's the main one. They're all free. You can also get Facebook Blueprint and Google Analytics. Cool. I'll spend 2 minutes talking about being on your own and freelance. Like I said, it is incredibly easy to start a business. You could Google it online in Louisiana, at least, although I think most businesses are registered in Delaware for weird tax legal purposes, but that's not important. Louisiana, you basically send a $75 check to the Secretary of State, claim your business. Then they send you a PDF of a certificate. I wish they sent you a real certificate. I feel like I got a lot more for that 75 bucks, but they don't. It's super easy to do. You register then with the federal government. You get an EIN, which I felt super legit when I got that and memorized it. And then nothing happens. You have a business, but you don't have anything to do. So you have to get clients. I strongly recommend, and my first thing is that you should be prepared for zero revenue for a while. So I actually, like, when I did it, I basically had my 6 months earnings from my company, but then I just assumed that money would run out, and we've always basically bootstrapped ourselves. So we had that 6 months of job funding, and then I just kind of started making money before that money ran out, thankfully. And that's still what we're working on to this day. So I definitely recommend, don't plan out your future a lot better than I did. Plan out revenues coming in, but be prepared for zero revenue. Word of mouth, testimonials, and case studies are key. This is, again, why it's really good to work for an agency at the start and not do what I did and go straight into it. Because if you work for an agency, you'll have case studies, you'll have work, and you'll also, most importantly, have connections. To be frank, that's how most people get started. If you ever sign up for an agency, they will likely have a clause in your contract that says not to do this, which is don't steal your clients from the agency, because it's the best way to start your own thing and to start being a freelancer. Is your clients are likely paying your company that you work for a lot more money for your skills. It's the evil of capitalism. That's what your company is taking from you. And so you'll essentially, you could always email that client and be like, hey, I'd love to do my work, but I'd love to cut out that part the agency's making. And that's how most people start freelancing. So again, be prepared for no money and have word of mouth testimonials and case study. The most important thing is that first year when you're starting. This is our first company value, actually. Like I said, we actually try to believe in our values. Build on trust. Your trust is everything, especially if you're starting a business in New Orleans or you're doing web design or freelance. Those initial projects are more important than anything else. If you screw them up, you're not going to get a second chance. And they also will give you the reputation and the ability to showcase your work far beyond you just saying that you're good at what you do. So I just always like reiterating that. Cool. If you're successful at freelancing and entrepreneurship, congratulations. This is what your future looks like. This is a schedule, a basic week of mine. This is actually more free than this week, I think. This is all I do all day. As someone who loved marketing and coding and websites, all I do is meet with people. So important to remember, success isn't everything. Don't try to grow at all costs like I do, because this is what I do. You can see, though, we have office yoga. Again, fun agency life things that we do so people feel better when they work long hours, and other crazy stuff. And then a happy hour. Always do happy hour. Cool. Anyway, that's what it's like. Shameless plug. If you want a first step, you want to get into agency life, or for some reason you want to listen to me talk even more, although if you're a specialist, you actually don't talk to us too much. We have a paid internship program. We call it Specialist Program. You get hourly pay. You do real work. That is our January. That was last year's specialist class, actually. The woman second from the right is Irene Lopez, who got a full-time job with us. And that's actually kind of a lot of our recruitment. More than half of my team started as specialist. So if you go to bit.ly/Delgado apply, you will be taken to our specialist program page. And I'll, of course, share that on my social media, which I have everything. But mostly my name, my email, then my Twitter is Flynn Zaiger. I'm also on LinkedIn, and I will put on the chat, which has probably been what this flashing Zoom button has been the whole time. But I always think that I could handle chat and talk at the same time, and I totally can't. But thank you so much for listening. I think I have like 15 or 20, 25 minutes for questions. I'm happy to answer anything I can.
Okay, I actually haven't. I have an agency, and it's pretty much me. But I want to kind of expand, of course, and grow and get other people on my team. So when you first started, how did you go about the process of getting, other freelancers or even W-2 workers? Like, how was their process with like your first or your second employee? Like, how did you have money to pay them and all that other stuff that comes with business?
Yeah, so essentially, the way that the first employee gets hired, in my opinion, is usually, and this has kind of been a terrifying part, is whenever we had enough money to hire someone. So whenever the projects came in, was enough that I could eat and pay someone. We literally, like, whenever we get a new client, we would spend that money immediately on a person, which is an insane and really, really dumb business strategy, because if we lose a client, I don't have money to pay that person. And like I said, there's a lot of reasons we should have went bankrupt years ago, and that was one of them. But thankfully, we're good at our job and didn't do it. I really strongly recommend for your initial hires, which are incredibly important, trying to get in. Let me say this. So I'm going to give a recommendation, and then I'll recommend against it. We did most of our hires from initially from referrals and people we knew, which was super helpful in some ways, because rather than finding strangers online, it was like people that had worked with them before and they knew that they worked well. And so that was great. What it led to, unfortunately, is terrible diversity at my company, and something that we're really trying to work on. But because most of our hires were from people that worked for me and their friends and their connections and their business networking, and then also I reached out to like my connections, which were at Tulane. My team is mostly 20-something white kids, which is not good. It's not a good business strategy. It's not a good moral strategy.
Yeah.
It's not great. And it's age diverse, race diverse. We're good on gender, but that's really the only thing. Everything else is terrible. And so it's not, we shouldn't have done that. But that was what we did at the beginning. I actually think most businesses and organizations don't advertise that much for job postings. Because it's a terrible job on our side too. You have to go to Indeed, you go to Craigslist, you go to all these places, and every system is bad. I'm sure what y'all think uploading resumes 20 times and typing in that information again after you've uploaded it to the job application, which makes no sense, is super frustrating. We actually do the exact same thing on our end, because you upload the job position to Indeed, but then you have to go through and they want you to run surveys and tests, because then they could charge money. But if you're hiring your first person and you don't want to, and you don't have like a referral or connection or anything, you should advertise a lot and put a lot of money into that job search, and possibly because that is the most crucial thing, is getting the right second person on your team, especially if they're going to be a W-2, because W-2s will lead to, there's usually more benefits down the line. You also have to do payroll taxes, and then you might have to do unemployment if you have to fire them. It's an absolutely crucial decision. And it's one of those things where you're looking at like a Craigslist posting for $50 or Indeed posting for $200, and you're like, that's a lot of money when I could just do a free posting. But you should think about the 3 to 5 years that you're potentially working with this person, and how valuable it is to get the best possible applicant. And I'm giving an impassioned speech because I have to give this to myself every time when we have to post a job listing. I'm like, it's on our website, it's on Craigslist. We'll get whoever wants to work for us. No. We should be desperately searching for the best possible people for our team. And we really, I have like if you want to send me, so again, my contact information is there. I'm also going to put a LinkedIn as well. If you're trying to hire in New Orleans, specifically for like a marketing, did you say you were in New Orleans? I'm sorry, where'd you say you were from?
I'm not actually, I'm in Memphis, Tennessee. I just go to,
So
I just took on the opportunity to enroll in Delgado because they don't charge out-of-state fees, and the community college here sucks. So I was just like, okay, this college is not, charging out-of-state fees, and I'm glad I did. I love it. I mean, they offer so much. So I'm glad I did enroll.
Glad you did too.
But they don't have to be in Tennessee, they don't have to be in Tennessee, because it's a remote job anyway, but it's cool. I'm just looking for someone to help me out.
If you send me a quick email afterwards, so we have like literally a 40-step process now to when we post applications. And we actually, the reason I was asking about New Orleans is because we've gotten, every year, because sorry to higher education, but their websites are terrible and they don't update their staffing. So every year we have to go through and pull new staff, and we email professors and we email department heads, which we found to actually be really helpful. So if you're in New Orleans, I have those lists for recruitment, but I could give you a list of every website that we post on with Craigslist and Indeed, and we don't use Monster, but which ones we found work. Craigslist gets the most, but those applicants are typically not the best. And then the other websites, we've actually had a lot of success with LinkedIn, although I'm a little cautious because I think it's not helping our, I don't know.
I get it.
Yeah. So if you send me an email, I'm happy to give you that list. And then again, sorry that this is such a long answer to one question. Interview them, call references.
Oh, that's fine. I love it.
Yeah. More importantly than calling their references is try to talk to people at that organization who they didn't give as a reference. I will say ethically, if they are still at that company, you want to be careful. You don't want to let that company know they're job searching, because, and I've had other CEOs argue with me about this, but I think, this is a person, you don't want to ruin their current job security. It's not fair to you unless you're sure that you're going to give them an offer that they are accepting. It's not fair for you as a CEO to risk their current job security by calling them up for references. But if it's an older company where they're no longer working, calling them up and don't call the reference number they gave you, because that person's going to say they're great. Obviously, that's why they're on the reference sheet, and talking about how they worked. Then we usually do some sort of assignment. We try to make it, I've seen crazy assignments from companies, but I would give them, even if it's just 2 hours or 1 day, some sort of test similar to what they do. We're still struggling with that because I feel like we should compensate. We don't compensate people for that test, and we should compensate, but then you do compensate those people.
A lot of jobs do that. They want you to do free work, for the interview process.
It's terrible, and the reason they do is because we could get away with it. I don't know why society is okay with that. It's really horrible, and we specifically make sure it's not work that we'll give you a fake company and stuff. But we've had a lot of internal discussions this year over properly compensating people for the interview process. If you have a solution, I would love to hear it, because it should just be cash. We should just pay people cash. But anyway, this is
gift card or something.
But that's really, I do recommend giving some sort of assessment, because a portfolio could be faked and you don't know how much time it took. A resume, everyone can make themselves look great on one single sheet of paper. And references could come from anything, but give them a 2-hour test and you'll be able to see what they could do.
Cool. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I have a question for you. I know you had said on one hand, do projects for fun, and then also with agencies, what they give you is case studies. Would you recommend, for example, a student who doesn't have a job at an agency or is just looking out, turning whether it's their fun projects or even class projects into case studies?
Yeah, I think it's pretty obvious to, when we're looking through a resume or portfolio, we know, you look at it and you're this was clearly done for a class, and that's fine. That's what we, for the most part, companies aren't expecting entry-level people to come at us with crazy projects that took years and stuff. I think as long as you have a viable project and you could explain how it worked and the benefits, and that you planned it out, you did these elements, this is why it was successful, and you consider it successful. That's really the key, is when you do a portfolio, have an explanation. Don't just have screenshots, especially if it's if you can't give a live demo, which would be great if you could give a live demo, but it's good to give a situation and challenge and insights and my solution and the results. Absolutely. One other thing that I'll note is if a good way to get real life experience is working with nonprofits. This is actually really good also if you want to get into Google Ads, like I said, my personal opinion, I tell every class I talk to, try to get into, if you want a career, just do Google Ads. It's desperately needed. Is that there's a grant for nonprofits to run Google Ads for free. It's why usually people don't have much experience. But you could do it. Essentially, yeah, if you work with nonprofits, they usually are extremely limited on resources, extremely grateful for help. And you might be doing good for the world, which isn't necessarily everyone's cup of tea, but it is helpful. And that would allow you reach out to them, work with them. You work with them on a volunteer basis. Say, hey, can I rebuild you a website? Can I create this software that I think will help your organization? I would like to volunteer my time for you. It will cost you nothing. And they usually don't do any reference checks or anything. It is crazy what access I was given to for nonprofits as a 23-year-old with should not have been given passwords to things. But they're extremely limited on resources and staff. And that's a good way to get your foot in the door. Not a good way to make money, I'll tell you that right now. But if you see the importance of getting you want that sort of case study experience, it's an extremely competitive job market right now. And working with nonprofits, while not a great long-term money-making solution, is a great way to build up a portfolio. And they are extremely grateful, and they give you references and testimonials and case studies. So I highly recommend finding something you're passionate in, finding a nonprofit related to it that has a terrible website or marketing, which will be delightfully easy, I promise you, and reaching out to them and offering your capabilities. It's a great way to build a portfolio. I think there's another question from Tracy. Unfamiliar with case study or portfolio format, resource you could recommend to view case studies and or portfolio formats. So if you're doing marketing, it's typically, I actually don't have a good answer to this. We literally just started doing this for our specialists. So if you get a specialist program now, we realized that this was a major solution. We came up with this cutesy tagline years ago of the last internship you'll ever have to do, which is a great tagline. And then COVID hit, and our specialists, we used to have a really good track record of either hiring specialists or getting them positions within 3 or 6 months, and it got crushed in COVID. And so we've been doing everything we can to try to live up to that tagline. And one of the things we now do is we help people build portfolios, and we rewrite their resumes, and we do interview training. So we have a custom portfolio template, but it's really just a Google Slides template that we customize slightly. I honestly, I was gonna say I have a quick answer for this. What I found on the web. Sorry, like I said, don't love tech demos, and I shouldn't do them with 3 phones next to me. But essentially, when I do a follow-up, I'll do a follow-up post after this. I don't know, Claude, if I could we could put this presentation somewhere and then email it out to attendees. Could we do that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, great. Totally.
I will do that by end of day, and we'll have answers I'll have an updated list of certifications, and I'll also have a better answer for this case study or portfolio format, because I don't have that answer off the top of my head, and it's a great question, and we should have a resource for that on our website. So we'll get that by the end of the day. I feel like if it's just standard format though, and it's a design stuff, PDF is preferred. But I'll try to find a better, longer answer for you. Absolutely. Yeah, it's a great question. Sorry, you're going to see me typing quickly to make a note to answer that question. Okay.
It looks like we have a question from Ms. Nini Bundu.
Yes. Hi. First of all, thank you, Flynn, for being super transparent and honest about your experience and what it took to get there. Second of all, what would you advise for somebody that does not have a background in marketing, but mostly has a background in kind of their switching careers? What's the best way to go about to get a position at a marketing agency? And like I said, do we need a portfolio? What exactly, but not in the design aspect of it, more in the project management type segment?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think the key to this is really emphasizing how your past experience is helpful in marketing. And I would actually say, for the most part, we actually have very few marketing degrees at our agency. Most of the people are English majors. Excuse me. But actually, we kind of look for people in the service industry with experience that are interested in getting into this career. The reason being that we could usually teach digital skills. and if you've dealt with the service industry, you could usually deal with tough clients. It's kind of a go-to strategy there. So I think talking up your abilities in handling any sort of similar project stuff. So talking about how you led teams or handled careers. And that's another thing is I know that this is a lot of work, but customizing your resume and cover letter, if they're looking for it specifically for every position, takes a lot of time. I'm very aware of, but it is incredibly helpful in getting your resume to the top of the pile. And it's pretty obvious from us when someone's like clearly updating this position to talk specifically about like our requirements. But A, if you're doing a quick glance, it looks a lot better and more relevant to the position. And B, we can see that you put the effort and you're clearly trying to get this job. So I think going through your resume and thinking clearly about how does this specific position relate to the specific job I'm applying for, and adding flourish and connecting it to different words is a good way to do it. Again, certifications that I'll make a list of online are helpful. And then the one thing that I really love about digital marketing and design is that this can be done for, relatively low price, getting a domain, building out a website. You can build yourself that portfolio and experience for relatively low cost, especially with the skills that you've gained from your courses. And that's a great way to showcase your abilities, is you don't need to have worked for massive companies. Even to this day, I've never worked for like really big companies. But I think that I know how to explain my experience and talk up what I've done in a way that when we cater it specifically to whoever we're talking to. So like from our side, like when we're talking to clients, we talk about industry specific experience. So like we work in higher education or in cryptocurrency or whatever, whoever we're talking to. And like, we have limited experience in both of those things. But when we're talking to a company in one of those industries, that's all we talk about. And we customize our proposals with graphics and images that are specific to that company. So for them, they think that that specific industry is all we care about. And you should be doing similar things. If you're applying for a very specific project management job, your resume, your cover letter, everything should be specifically about that company and that project management job. And I know that job searching is the suckiest thing in the world. It is terrible. It takes forever. It's slow. You get no responses. It's horribly depressing to do. And I don't have a good solution to. This is a good time for me to mention that one of the reasons online optimism is called online optimism is because I'm a very pessimistic person. I thought if I said the word optimism for 8 straight years, it would rub off, and it clearly has not. But essentially, it is terrible. And I know that all of my advice about like apply for jobs that are difficult to apply for, customize your resume and cover letter for every single position, make a terrible thing even worse and more stressful. But I can tell you right now, we have, for these specialist positions this summer, I have 141 applicants, and there's still for 6 positions. And that's not a career. This isn't like a full-time, there's no job benefits. This is $10 an hour. It's a internship program, and our acceptance rate will be lower than Harvard's acceptance rate, because that's the kind of job market that you're going into. So you really do need to take the time and effort to stand out. At least in the upcoming months until COVID's done. It's fiercely competitive. I've never seen anything like it, at least in 8.5 years. That was a terrible. We should ask another question so we don't end on that note, because but yeah, anything you can to customize it specific for the position and adjusting your experience and background. Like you can make your background sound relevant to the positions you're applying for. It needs to be customized every time. That's really my best advice.
Okay, thank you so much.
Yeah, sorry.
Well, it looks like we have a question from Kenneth. He says, I'm in a position of a company looking for an agency intern to handle a product launch. How do I know easily whether the agency is a good fit for our product? Is hiring an intern a better risk for doing our marketing versus an agency that is stuck in a quote mode?
Good question. There's a lot of benefits. I'd say an intern, if you've managed people before and you can manage an intern well, they can be very useful because they're only working for you. If you're like me, I managed my first intern terribly. So it's kind of a stress level there. I would say interns are probably much cheaper than an agency. And and they could be a lot more nimble. If you have a contract with an agency, like we try to shift and be nimble, but we have contracts and scopes of services, whereas a intern, if something's not working, you tell them to stop doing it, work on something else, and they'll change. For interns, also, again, you have all the hiring experience that I talked about. For agencies, I love asking questions about just going through the experience of talking to them and seeing what questions they ask you is key. If an agency is making a proposal for a product launch, they should interview you and ask you a ton of questions about goals and experience and what you have and what makes your product different. And if you don't feel like you've been grilled before getting a proposal, I would stay away from that company. I think it's good. I don't say that you should ask a trick question, but you should make sure that the agency is being honest with you about the expectations. If someone comes in and they're like, yeah, for $1,000, we're going to make this a national product, and the V word, or they tell you that they're going to go viral, I would have a lot of questions about it. And I think going in with your expectations and talking to them and making sure that they're not just saying yes to everything, like, yes, we could do that. Yes, we could do this. Being realistic in how their partnership is and making sure that they will tell you no is a good sign that the agency has experience and knows what they're doing. I would also, again, similar to references, we'll give you, if we ever made a proposal for you, we would give you references, and I'll tell you those references are going to be great because we know, we've already asked those people, will you give us a great reference? But looking at who, the secret is to go in their social media and find companies that they've talked about that are like, oh, we just got a new client from 2019 or 2020. And if these clients aren't listed on their website, they're probably not working with them anymore. And if you want, you can reach out to those companies and be like, hey, I saw that you used to be a client of whatchamacallit, I'm considering them. How was it? You could be real naive about it. They're probably not working with them for a reason. And sometimes it's a good reason. Maybe it was just a one-time project. Or maybe when you talk to this company, you'll find out that they were probably a terrible client. But that's a trick to figuring out agencies, is talk to people that they're not featuring, but that you can find on their social media they clearly worked with in the past. Find out why they're not working with them anymore. I mean, we're an agency. We've had a lot of great partnerships. We've obviously grown a lot. We've had campaigns that didn't go well. I'm happy to talk about them. There's some mistakes that we made in our earlier days. There's relationships or scope of services or different expectations that didn't work out. But that's really a secret way to get the truth about working with a company, and try to get just seeing what their work looks like. Make sure that their work looks good for their product launches. Yeah. Cool.
All right. I mean, I know we're basically at time. So if there are any other questions, I guess we'll wrap this up. Thank you so much, Flynn, for talking to everyone, being here with us, answering all our questions, and giving us a really good insight into what this looks like. So thank you so much.
Absolutely. I appreciate everyone. Feel free to email me or connect with me on LinkedIn. And I'll get that blog post up with certifications, case study, and portfolio stuff by end of day, and we'll send it out to y'all so you could enjoy. Thank you. Thank you again for listening.